Chelsea take on Tottenham Hotspur in the Premier League on Thursday night. It's a big game for both sides. It's a London derby. It always means a lot, this one, and we've seen some crackers between these two sides in the past. Joining me to preview this one are Sam Tighe and Abbi Summers. Abbi, let's start with you because you go into this game after a disappointing North London derby result.
Yeah.
And there must be a little bit of extra anxiety when you come up against Chelsea, given maybe what happened earlier on in the season.
Yeah, look, there's always anxiety when there's any London derby anyway. But yeah, Chelsea is always a very, let me say, hotly contested affair. I mean, two sides that absolutely hate each other. And it's well known, we can go back to Battle of the Bridge, and we'll obviously take it back to earlier this season when Spurs went on to 9 men, having a complete head loss, when in complete control of the game, might I just add. But yeah, it's always a good one. Not the best record at Stamford Bridge for Spurs. I think it's literally 1 win in like the last 20 years. But there's stuff on this game. Spurs can still get Champions League. We need to be picking up points in this one. This is a game in hand that we've got. Also, obviously, Mauricio Pochettino, Spurs desperately wanted to get one up on him, and to the point, had a head loss last time. So there's a lot on it. I think coming off the back of that North London derby, where the result will maybe tell you otherwise, but I don't think Spurs were particularly poor. I've seen us be a lot worse this season. But set pieces, and that's my biggest concern. Tottenham cannot defend at all. So if Chelsea have learned anything from that game, they'll be trying to get as many set pieces, corners that they can get, because they know that's Spurs' biggest weakness.
Chelsea also can't really defend set pieces for what it's worth, so
goals galore.
Yeah. 4-all.
But we can't really score at the minute unless someone's gifting it. So that's another problem for Tottenham,
Sam, you'd have watched Chelsea up close this weekend as they took on Aston Villa. Yeah. It was a poor first half from Chelsea, but as we've seen at points this season, they can produce for spells in games. And they thought at the end that they'd won it.
Yeah.
I think that was the right decision in the end, having watched it back. But that could have been a real lift-off point for Mauricio Pochettino's side. And it could have put them into a position where they could finish the season strongly at least. And he can gain some further support from some of the supporters that are maybe asking questions of him.
You can still take a lot from that performance. I wouldn't even say that it was a bad first half. I'd say it was a bad first 15 minutes. And then from that point, Chelsea actually got a real grip on the game, moved the ball really cleanly. Villa, for the record, Villa are far too tired to be chasing anyone around the pitch. So it is actually a bit of a layup, especially when Villa take the lead so early. You do tend to retreat a little bit. But Chelsea got their foot on the ball and they moved it around basically from about the 15th minute and never really looked back. They did in the end get the draw. It was the least they deserved. I agree it was a foul, and so the winner was rightly chalked off, but Chelsea can feel aggrieved at just having, on the balance of play, not taken 3 points from that game regardless of the decision. I thought Caicedo was absolutely fantastic in midfield, and Marc Cucurella started inverting into midfield next to him and allowing Caicedo to push on. So then you had kind of like Gallagher and Cucurella who were sort of guarding the back four, and then you had Caicedo unleashed. And we know that Pochettino likes to play a bit of counter pressing, a high energy style. He likes to press opponents' build up. He's not so great at the other stuff. This was a perfect solution for him to just unleash Caicedo, and he was absolutely magnificent. Like, this man single-handedly trapped Aston Villa in their own box for about 20 minutes. And we're starting to see now, over the last 2 to 3 months, the Caicedo performances are picking up and picking up. And I come out of each game and I go, he was pretty good there. Following week, he was pretty good again. And I know a lot of questions asked about his transfer fee, and he's already spoken about how difficult it is to live up to that. But this player is starting to look really, really good. He and Gallagher in the centre with Cole Palmer floating just in front. Looks like a good combination.
I think that's absolutely fair. The problem is that when you spend as much money as Chelsea did, it's very hard to then sell the idea to the supporters that actually it might be next season for a lot of these players.
Sure.
You want to see the results now.
Also, I mean, there was no Enzo that featured, and that's an even bigger problem for Chelsea. The amount of money they spent on Enzo Fernandez. If they're getting the best out of Caicedo when Enzo's not there, then what do you do with Enzo Fernandez?
Yeah, that's a great question.
And they put Enzo Fernandez further forward as a number 10 to start the season, and it was a disaster.
I mean, we knew how good Caicedo was from Brighton. He had every club coming in for him and looking at him and wanting to spend that big money off the back of only one season. So everyone could see the potential. I think Chelsea have been an extremely odd mixed bag this season and not good at all. But actually, when you break it down, they have actually had some progress, and they have actually got some decent players. Nicholas Jackson will get ripped apart like he does all the time for the finishing, but as a player, he actually holds the ball up really well. He's really progressive with it, gets into good positions, and he actually didn't come in to be a striker. He came in to be a winger, and as a winger, he's actually not too bad. It's just in front of goal where you want him to finish. That's just not his best attribute.
On Spurs, Abby, lots of talk about the North London derby and some of the lessons that needed to be learnt from that. But I would argue that over the course of the season, we've seen the same areas of weakness in this Tottenham side. Is there a frustration that maybe Ange Postecoglou is too stubborn or too set on his ways, and that actually his unwillingness, I guess, to change it a little bit and adapt is going to be a problem for Spurs in the longer term?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. This is not me saying I want Ange out or anything like that. I think that you just have to call it for what it is. I really love the bravery that Ange wants Tottenham to play with. I love that he wants to do the high line for life, and it's all become a bit of a laugh and a joke about it. But you also have to be smart as a coach or as a manager. You have to also have a plan B. Pep Guardiola has a plan B. Arteta, Klopp, I'm pretty sure Ancelotti has a plan B. And I think that you can't go through the Premier League or any competition in football and not have that. You know, I'm not saying you have to totally get rid of your principles and your style of play, but you also have to learn how to manage a game. And for me, in the North London derby, we just played right into Arsenal's hands. I mean, Arsenal said, no problem, you can have all the possession. We know that we'll get a set piece. We know that's what you're worst at. You can't defend them, you know, with your zonal marking. So we'll get that. That's what we're best at. We'll punish you that way. Or if you push up too high and you leave someone like Ben Davies there instead of Mickey van der Ven, we'll just do a ball over the top and we'll hurt you. We're so clinical. Whereas Spurs are weak up front. They really are. You know, Son is, you know, a great player, great servant, and obviously the captain. But at the same time, he's not where he was. You know, he's a lot weaker when you put him on the left. His best moments are when defences get tired, you know, and then he can try and take a man on. But he's not as explosive as he used to be. Brennan Johnson has improved, but again, that's a work in progress. I think the final ball into the box isn't always great. We're trying to float balls in, which is what I noticed against Arsenal. With what? We've got one of the smallest front lines in the Premier League. Different if Richarlison's up there, maybe to try and hold the ball up. But in the derby, for a lot of that game, we didn't have that. Timo Werner, obviously here on loan, has been one of the only people to actually assist in recent weeks. But again, not strong, not physical enough. James Maddison massively dropped off. Had a great first half of the season, a really poor second half since he came back from injury, and can only play 65 minutes. So there are definitely weaknesses there. We love to do this intricate passing as well, try and have the perfect goal and take a million touches before it gets into the box or the back of the net. But at some point, you need to shoot. You know, goals win games, and if you're going to play the high line, you've got to be clinical because we're going to concede. Yeah. And at the minute, Spurs are conceding and they're not scoring. And this is a big problem for Ange, and it's one that I think this season we can look at and say it's a real season of two halves. The first half of the season, I saw a lot of progress. We were keeping clean sheets and doing really well. But the second half, we've massively dropped off. So I need to see in the summer how that goes. I'm not saying it's all on him. You know, I think you lose your 30 goal a season striker on the day before the season starts. That's going to affect anything. And it's going to take a long time to replace Harry Kane and what he brings, holding the ball up, laying it off and bringing people into it as well as the goals itself. So I'm not angry at that, but I just want Ange to maybe be not pragmatic, but I want some sense,
some variation.
Yeah,
to the way that
just
he
give me something
games.
More than just high line gung ho football.
Bit of compromise would be nice.
Yeah,
Right?
If we could defend, because it's a really funny thing to say. Sorry, I know we're going.
If we could just defend.
I know we're running out of time here. While I have a breakdown on Spurs, I've had many a breakdown on this show about Spurs. But what I would say is that it sounds ridiculous because Spurs have conceded so many goals this season, okay? But Mickey van der Ven is a great centre-back. Romero's a good centre-back. You know, I look at Udogie and Porro, they're brilliant full-backs. So it's not making sense to me. I wouldn't swap them. So I need to understand what's not...
It's got to be a system thing.
Yeah, what's not correlating here? Because they're all good in their positions, but you just can't defend. So we need to figure out... And that's on Ange, and what they're doing on the training ground. So... Jury's out.
Sam?
What? So right, I have a question for you.
Yes.
You know Chelsea are going to press you.
Yeah.
How's that going to go?
Probably not very well. Look,
because this would have directly informed my prediction.
Yeah, I feel like, again, Spurs have been pretty weak in terms of midfield, and the usual partnership, which he didn't go for in the derby, would usually be Basuma and Sarr and Maddison. Sar's got legs, and I really like Sar. And I was actually surprised he didn't start the other day because of him progressing the ball, holding the ball up, and just having the legs to kind of carry. I was surprised he didn't start. Basuma had a good 35 minutes when he come on, but again, Arsenal didn't need to put the pressure on. They'd already won the game at this point, so they could sit back. They weren't really pressing to him. I think if Chelsea are going to get something out of this game, Spurs play quite narrow, so you're going to want to utilise kind of the flanks and the fullback areas. There's no Doggy, so Ben Davies will likely be there again, and I think that's where they can get joy, and also pressing on Basuma. Not to give my tactics away if I was Poch.
But Chelsea used the wide areas very well. Madueke was excellent against Aston Villa. He isolated Luka Dean and just rinsed him outside, inside, just kept him spinning and spinning and spinning, and the goal was the least he deserved. So, picking up on just about everything you've said, I'm gonna go ahead and say Chelsea might get some joy here. I think Chelsea are going to win.
I fancy Chelsea
2-1.
2-1, Abby?
I fancy a draw, and that's also just because of how feisty this game is. Like I said, I didn't feel that Spurs were particularly... It wasn't the worst game I've seen us play in the derby. I think we just made a rod for our own back in that first half, and was just too much to kind of come back from. But again, I need Spurs to start taking shots from outside the box, because that's what Chelsea do. Conor Gallagher does it so well, and I need us to start doing that rather than try and walk it in, because we need to kind of utilise the whole of the space, the wings and everything, the flanks against Chelsea, not just be narrow and compact and play into their hands.
Score prediction?
I'm going to go 2-2.
2-2. It's a good old-fashioned London derby, and it's coming up later this week. Leave your predictions in the comments section below.